Welcome to Coffee and Code. I believe this is our sixth episode. I think it's time for me to get the web page up that's dedicated to Coffee and Code now that we have enough content to warrant it. So I'm here with some of the MVPs and some of the team members from the winning team from the hackathon, the beta team, and they were very creative in calling their solution Beta Max. So I thought that was kind of funny. So I'm here with Ryan, who was kind of the ringleader of the group. He did most of the presentation. So, I always tell people that you want to have non-developers on your team because they usually do a good job of, usually if you have someone that's in marketing or sales, they do a really good job at presenting. And it's not always the best solution, but the one that's sold well. So Ryan, you did a great job of selling your solution. But right. I mean, in actuality, it was a really creative solution, actually. Can you tell us a little bit about the solution?
Yeah, so what we wanted to do is, with the pandemic and everything going on, one of the problems we saw is that, or opportunities we saw, was with kind of remote assistance of things. And we wanted to provide a way for anyone within Acumatica to be able to leverage remote assistance. And examples would be like, let's say, in an IT support, you want to have someone be able to kind of help you remotely. And so the example we gave is we had someone whose screen was flipped upside down. And what ended up happening was the support person just created a case in Acumatica, and they created a custom activity type, which was our Betamax type. And that automatically created this view into the other person's camera. So behind the scenes, we sent an SMS message to the phone, and the end user clicks on a yes, share my screen, and it now shares the screen. So they're able to kind of show them what's going on their screen. And so there are many uses beyond just like your IT support. But going to IT for a second, a lot of times what happens is if you're in IT, the first thing you say is, oh, let me get remote access to your machine. And that's a big ask, to get remote access to someone's machine. So by saying, hey, I don't want remote access, how would I just send you an SMS so I can see on your phone's video camera what's going on? And so that's a little bit less of an ask. But we could see this going down to, let's say, a plumber wants to give a quote on some service. And so they don't have to come and see everything. They can just kind of create a case in Acumatica, create that new activity type, and it would then it would go ahead and allow them to see what's going on. So we see a ton of that now, especially since the COVID and the pandemic and all this stuff going on, is much more remote and acceptance of remote. So we enabled that kind of activity through our Betamax, and we like the name Betamax, of course, stemming from the old Betamax out there. And the funny thing is, I was actually on LinkedIn just a few days ago, and I saw somebody with this very same solution, where they're like, oh, hey, we now have remote assistants, and they're showing their cell phone, and they're looking at a printer remotely. And so I'm like, that's us. We're a month ahead of that release of that software.
They stole it from us. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. They stole it. We have a cooler name than they did. But that remote assistance we saw as a big thing, and that we wanted Acumatica customers to take advantage of that.
So one of the things I'm interested in, and I see this dynamic because I'm the one that organizes all the teams, right? I put you together. You don't really have a choice. I try to, obviously your developer Jeremy, I try to keep same company people together. But when you guys got together and you organized yourselves, what was the process like for you in terms of getting together and some of the challenges, convincing others, whose idea was it? And then how did, was there any tension between, competing ideas and stuff? And how did that actually come about, your solution? How did it form?
So we had several meetings where people presented different options that they had. I was pushing for a solution. I lost. I'm not bitter about it at all, but my idea was not accepted amongst the group. So I kind of threw it out there, and I was reading some faces, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if they're really buying into this. So I pushed it a little bit, but someone else came up with this solution, and
I think we all kind of
Marco came up with it, and so we looked at it, and one of the advantages we had is he had some experience with the technology. So the not necessarily integrating it into Acumatica, but the underlying technology we used, and I forget now the name of the communication software.
It's from Vonage.
Vonage, yeah.
Yeah, and he had already done a small project with something else with this Vonage app.
Yeah,
or
so
integration. Yeah.
So Ryan, you said you weren't bitter, but being a CEO, usually you used to get in your way. Is that correct?
I know. I pushed. I was fighting until the end, and I'm like, all right, well, you're good experience with this, and so.
I think one of the key factors in these type of things is managing your members' ambitions, which can exceed the capability of what we can get done in one day.
Being able to get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad. So Patrick, thanks for joining. I know you're in the middle of a sprint, and I told you that I think the only way I could entice you is saying you only need to be here for 5 minutes. So I wanted to get your perspective as a developer, and you're one of our MVPs along with Diane, who are on the team, and I have a lot of respect for your development skills and so forth. Can you give just a little bit of perspective that you have as a developer being in the hackathon? And this is how many hackathons have you been to now?
This is my second.
Second, that's right.
Yeah.
So can you just give me your experience from a developer perspective?
Yeah, we had a really good team this year. You always walk into this thing. I didn't have a gold-plated idea for our hackathon, so it's really great to jump into a team as varied as ours was, with a lot of experience on the customer side, reseller, ISV. So that helps a lot, and I was lucky that I found ways to contribute. Because I am in the product everyday coding solutions for Acumatica. So yeah, great. It's really great when you have a varied team, and the pressure's not all on you to come up with some idea for something, but you can also contribute the skills that you have. And this time I was able to slide right in and provide some technical skills and get some coding done and contribute to the team. And yeah.
So did you learn anything new in your experience?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, working with the other developers, I as an ISV developer, I kind of have my lane where I do things, and definitely got a view into other solutions, working with SMS, an external API like Vonage. Yeah, very interesting. So yeah, definitely was a good experience.
Okay. And Diane, as another developer, and I'll just throw this little tidbit out. You and I met at an actual development class. So I just joined Acumatica, and we were in the same class together in Kirkland. And so I'll always remember that because we sat next to each other, I believe. Mm-hmm. So we've both kind of come a long way in the Acumatica family, if you will. So you've been to, have you been to every hackathon? Have you been to all 5?
5, yeah.
Yeah, you've been to every single one. So
old timer, yeah.
Yeah. So what's your perspective on this? You've been on other teams. Have you won before? Is this your first? This is your first win, right?
We had a third place one time. I don't remember which year. And then this one was the first time that I've been on a team that has won. Yeah. But it's always interesting because everybody has their perspectives, just like Patrick was saying, and they have their strengths and their weaknesses. And so it was interesting to see who was doing which pieces, and I tried to help where I could. I learned about the fact that we've got webhooks in Acumatica that you can take advantage of, and I didn't realize that was even there. So my bad for not for not checking that out earlier, but this project used that, and so that was an interesting, different thing. Jeremy and I worked through that, and it was really good. Marco took on a lot of work on this project because he knew the Vonage part, so he had a lot of debugging to do, but we all kind of chipped in, so I think that was very helpful.
Yeah, having Marco on the team was probably a good thing because Marco, his team actually won the very first hackathon.
Yeah.
And he's and Darren also, I think, wasn't Darren on your team?
Darren was our advisor.
You guys are kind of stacked, actually. I'm going to have to be careful next year I try to balance the teams as best as possible. But the way you got Marco on your team actually is Darren couldn't really. He had some deliverables at Acumatica, and he was under a lot of pressure, and he couldn't contribute like he wanted. So we had an exception where we allowed Marco to work with you guys remotely to replace Darren, and Darren's one of our stars at Acumatica Developers, so he's always in the hunt when he does the hackathon. So I have to be careful about who I arrange the teams to be fair, but all the stars aligned for you guys. I think having some talented people on the team and some good direction, and it looks like you guys did a good job working together. So that's great to hear. So Jeremy,
jump in here.
Yeah, I would love you to jump in. I was just going to ask you, your perspective. Is this your first hackathon?
It's my first Acumatica Hackathon, and I'm coming at it with a little bit different perspective in that I'm fairly new to the Acumatica platform. So I just want to mention having Darren and Marco available to us that was really clutch, and that was one thing that I liked that was different about the other hackathons, such as AT&T's hackathon that I've been to, in that you have the Acumatica devs right there to work with. So that was one of the things that I appreciated about this hackathon that was different from other ones. I did like the professional atmosphere. There was no expectation to stay up the entire night. That was a nice change from other ones that I've been to.
Yeah, well, we don't want to wreck people, for the summit, right? And I'm an older guy too, and I don't like doing all-nighters anymore. In college that was fine, but once I hit my past 30, I don't like doing all-nighters anymore. So, and
we did have a late evening.
Yeah, what time did you guys finally go to bed?
2 or 3, I think.
Oh,
yeah,
so you guys
2:30 was the last.
Yeah, I think Gabriel. One of the reasons Gabriel didn't join.
One
of the reasons Gabriel didn't join is last year he said he was up till 4 or 5 in the morning, and it wrecked him for the rest of the summit. So that's why he didn't participate this year. So hopefully, we can up till 3. It didn't wreck you guys for next year. You guys still planning to come back? Some of you, hopefully.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Yeah. Good. So Jeremy, so as a new guy, so I think, one of the things I want to hit on, I'm glad you were someone that didn't have a lot of experience with Acumatica. So go a little bit deeper into, what you gained from this hackathon as a newbie, besides the fact that it was different than AT&T, but just from a growth perspective and what you learned.
Well, I really got to pick Diane's brain and Patrick's brain quite a bit as we set up, Patrick set up, for example, the customization screen. That was somewhat new to me, so I got to kind of just look over his shoulder and not actually contribute to that part too much. And then Diane and I dug into the webhook part, which talked to the Vonage API to figure out what we need to do next as far as getting the calls set up and whatnot. So I got to pick everybody's brain on the team, people who work with us every day. So, I was a little bit worried as a new to Acumatica guy that, I'd be dragging the team down, but it felt like I brought my programming experience and combined it with their Acumatica experience, and it all worked out great. So I wouldn't hesitate to encourage new people to Acumatica to go to the hackathon, even if they're not real familiar with the Acumatica way yet, because it's a good way to get started.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask Robert, who wasn't on the team, to kind of pipe in, because I think Robert, you said a lot of good things in private and in other conversations that we've had, I think publicly as well, as somebody who won the Developer of the Year. But you're a big hackathon, someone who really likes the hackathon, and you worked on a different project. But I'd be curious for you to echo about the learning opportunity and what you gain out of it as well. Last year you were new as well, right?
I was new last year. Yeah, last year was my first hackathon. What I really like about hackathon is it kind of just gets you out of your primary day job focus, and you get to explore different aspects of Acumatica that you normally wouldn't with your day job. So, with payments, we're just in the accounts receivable and payables modules, and we don't venture too far out of that. But with Hackathon, you get to play around with project management and all sorts of other stuff, like whatever the project entails. So it's always a great learning experience. It's time consuming, like the whole week leading up to it, just doing all the preparation and study and whatnot. This time around, we actually had a simultaneous contingency plan because we weren't sure if we were going to be able to get to the hotel and have these IoT devices actually wire up correctly. And if that doesn't work, that's a whole problem. So we had a completely different contingency plan in case we had to ditch that idea. But thankfully, we got it working up front. We struggled to get something fully working at the end. So like most of it was like just presenting the idea and whatnot. I hope that maybe like
your solution was mostly slideware, wasn't it?
Vaporware, I think.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, there are a lot of people had trouble, I think, finishing up with their solution. And so, that it was a challenge. And Ryan, your team actually was able to demonstrate pretty clearly, and being a visual solution as well, doing video, and I think you guys did a great job of making it fun as well from a presentation. The scenario and doing that. It was a fun solution, I think, to watch. And I wasn't a judge because I have to recuse myself for obvious reasons. I organize it and I set the teams up, so I wouldn't be a good judge. But just my perspective is that I thought you guys did a very good job of presenting. It was a very visual solution that everyone could relate to, and it was different. It was out of the box. I think I don't think I've ever thought of using Acumatica to help support and do remote monitoring and doing what you guys did. So I thought you guys did a great job. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I would like to say one thing about the time aspect. I mean, we did stay up late and people put in a lot of hours on this, but honestly, we barely got the thing working like an hour and a half before the deadline.
Is that right?
We were concerned. We were very concerned. And then all of a sudden we got that last little bit, and then everyone could, breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah, I definitely can echo that. I didn't get a chance to really pay attention to your guys' presentation because we were just pulling stuff together last minute. Yeah. And pulling, so yeah, it's not a lot of time to pull something together. Just a day and a half worth of work.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast that time goes.
Mm-hmm.
So on that, what goes through my mind, someone that's trying to improve year to year, and show progress and evolve. Do you have any thoughts on how we could improve the hackathon in terms of, giving you more time, different resources? I mean, is there anything you guys can think that could improve your experience and help teams? Anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't even know if like a 2-day hackathon, you just kind of stretch out what you do.
Yeah.
A lot of times I found that whenever you give a particular time frame, if it's 1 day or 2, it kind of grows to take up that time, and the same amount of work gets done. You may do more exploring, but I don't know if that would do anything, or even doing I don't know if there's a way to kind of push people to finish projects after the fact. And if it was like a I don't know, something in the future that a month later do hackathon round 2 of finished projects, or give everyone a chance to kind of do more to it, or actually if you did 2 days, you could have a day 1 and a day 2 winner, where day 1 was okay, the base stuff. Okay, now day 2, the stuff that didn't work day 1, you have a chance to kind of redo, and maybe there's a lesser prize on day 2 or something.
Yeah, but something to incent to finish up. Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts?
I would say one thought which I would suggest is not to take too big piece of functionality to make, because like in scope of like for our team, we took so big piece, but we so small mouse, and we just bit in different parts, and that's it.
Well, yeah. Well, that's lessons learned for all development projects is scope creep, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Ali's advice to me when I was talking to him afterwards. You gotta shorten it a little bit and focus on a few things as opposed to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Something along that lines.
Yep. So Steve, I want to bring you in. You're on mute, and the reason I want to bring you in is one, you always have a good, interesting perspective and insight on things, and you're elegant in your speech. So I always like to bring you in if I can. But what I want to ask you, you were relatively new to Acumatica, joining us. How long have you been with Acumatica now? Technically, how many months?
11.
11, so almost a full year. And I was really happy that you participated in the hackathon. But I want to get your perspective as someone that's a relatively new employee with not a lot of Acumatica experience, but came in and worked on a team. And give me your thoughts on the hackathon, and as someone relatively new to Acumatica, and what your experience was.
Sure. Well, first of all, I've been to many of these types. My role at Microsoft was part of what we call the developer platform evangelism team, and part of that was I worked down in Silicon Valley mostly, but it was basically creating these in-house hackathons where developers would literally come to somebody's house in a living room and spend the next 48 hours or 24 hours literally not leaving, just ordering pizza and coming up with stuff. And that birthed actually quite a few companies that exist today.
Is that right?
That's where they come from.
Yeah.
But the situation there was already some incubated ideas, and so they basically would kind of surround their wagons around one or two of them or three, and then they would go off and in those groups, just like you assigned, Mark, and endeavor to come up with something that was either proved the concept was viable or show that it was not, or it was not valuable in the sense of any kind of economic investment or going forward with it. Some of those went to South by Southwest, by the way, where they were demonstrated on the same stage. In fact, one year the same stage was the day that, gosh, I forget his name, that founded Twitter, but that's when he went up there and showed Twitter, because that's where it was birthed, was South by Southwest, right there at one of those stages. So that's my experience with this stuff. So that's not what we're setting out to do here.
No.
That's a completely different objective here, is to really bring the community together and be innovative and try to poke at things that can expand and enhance the Acumatica ERP reality. So with that in mind, I thought that first, the teams that you brought together, one valuable aspect of bringing them out of the blue like that is you get to meet new people in the community. And that's something that I thought was very valuable. I had met, of course, hardly anybody until we went to Summit because of the COVID stuff.
Right.
In fact, I think, Mark, the only two people I had met up until Summit were Jason, who's our IT guy, and John, because John was the one that enticed me to come over. So anyways, that was really valuable to me, meeting people, putting faces and names, and people actually became three-dimensional to me instead of two-dimensional, which they had been for months. But that was basically the number one thing for me, was just putting faces and names and getting to know folks. There were some people that were there from partners as well as customers, and so it was nice being able to get their perspective on things as well. Our team probably bit more off than we could chew, and one of the things that I've learned also is that if it's not visual, it won't win. So it's got to have some eye candy in it, as I call it. It's got to be something that you can comprehend by seeing it. So I think that would be my advice to a lot of teams, is that there's some way of making it visual. And so our team, what they were going to do is put a dashboard together of the time savings and the goings on of some CI/CD development process, which I still believe we need to have, but for our partners, something recommended around how you do customizations and how you can apply, today's CI/CD methodologies. One of the things that I was trying to bring to fore was using Docker, but for some reason my PC kept failing, so I won't go into that frustration. That was 2 days of frustration on that. But nonetheless, that was our goal. But visualizations are important simply because the judges, from what I can tell from the 5 winners that have gone on, they all had something to that degree. So there's one aspect of when you're trying to set out, what are we going to do? Well, can you create a visualization around it? Can people see something as a result of your work? The second was innovation. Seemed to be a big winner. I think they have a scoring mechanism up on a slide. And I think wasn't innovation like plus 15 points or something like that? Seems to me that a couple of them were over single digit. And so innovation, how can you be innovative? Like the blockchain guys were being innovative. The Betamax guys, that was that's great stuff too that you're talking about here today.
Yeah.
All of those are visual, and they actually you can actually ascertain immediate impact on how that could make the community thrive better or work better or at least be more productive. So I think those are all aspects of what are winning solutions in the hackathon. But my takeaway was getting to meet people, getting to know who knows what is also a very valuable asset in my mind. Getting to meet the MVPs for the first time in person and getting to understand who they are and what they're all about. And I'd say that was really the nut of what I was looking to get out of it, besides being very frustrated with Docker.
Yeah. So do you see any areas, coming somewhat as an outsider in and having experience with other hackathons throughout your career, is there anything in your mind we could do better?
Well, it'd be nice if there were kind of a bait list of things that people would like to see addressed that might entice the one team to pick something off that list or not. I think it's a little random for teams to come together and try to surmise what is innovative, what's important, what's impactful. It'd be kind of nice to just have a list of topical areas that people could attack, and then they could define that as the team got together as to what they're going to specifically do. That would help direct at least the efforts, because I think one of the outcomes you're looking for, Mark, is, and it's been the case for several winners in the past, is that our development team takes some of those things and actually moves forward with them.
Yep.
That whole CI/CD thing I was mentioning, that was presented a couple of years ago too, and they've been continuing to work on that. There's nothing to show for it publicly. There's a lot to show for it privately, but that's an example of where that made an impact to us internally as kind of a wish list or a suggestion of where we should focus. So if that's going to be the case, that these things are fodder for that kind of thing going forward, it'd be nice to have a list of the things that, the playground, these are the toys out on the playground, pick one and go play with it and then see what you come up with, as opposed to just, everyone coming up with something random that they think might be important.
Yeah, so maybe look for areas that maybe holes that could be plugged with a project.
Yeah, those hackathons I mentioned earlier, they had themes like that. They would have themes around, productivity or interoperability or integration or middleware or systems architecture. They always had some sort of a theme driving the ideas that were going to be incubated at that, in that session. Yeah. So I don't think we need broad ones like that for this hackathon. But having a set of, a dozen or so ideas that are areas that you might want to consider theming your solution around, your presentation around.
Yeah, in the last couple of years, we've had the machine learning, IoT kind of but we had a smaller number of teams this year, and we had almost more prizes than teams practically, it seemed, or at least half, So we canned that this year. So we did it. The one theme that we always want people to shoot for is the machine learning area, and I think, Robert is a big IoT guy, and he's always, the last couple of years, I think last year you brought some devices, and this year you brought lots of devices. This year you had quite an ambitious.
Yeah, I noticed that, Robert, and I'm a big hacker in that electronics area as well. I've got a whole room in my house with oscilloscopes and power supplies and Raspberry Pis and Arduinos, and in fact, I've got what they call Brambles, stacks, 5, Raspberry Pis, and I got a Turing Pi. But yeah, that's true, Mark. That's a great area. That spurred me on. I didn't even really consider how important that could be. I know how important it is for ERP having IoT. I did a whole business thing in Barcelona around that, at one of the Microsoft conferences. But yeah, that spurred me on too. Just seeing Robert bringing those ideas and that kind of energy in. So that's the other thing that I think you get out of the hackathon is you bring all these groups together, and they create the sum is larger than the parts kind of energy and idea flow.
Yeah. Well, I think the hackathon's a big opportunity to really, materialize this idea of community, and have it come together actually physically. You talked about, two-dimensional versus, being able to be there, and people are in three, they're actually there as human beings in the flesh. And there's nothing, I think one of the things that we try to do with the summit, and I've tried, to convince people to send their developers, try to offer, a reason to come. The hackathon is certainly a big reason for developers to come, but also the developer sessions that we offer, right? We have a dedicated track for developers. And so we really would like, these conferences to really grow for developers and get them involved. But I think, at least in my mind, one of the most valuable things is just be able to meet and network with other developers, right? And a lot of times these types of conferences are usually, sales and marketing people, right? It's all about driving business and building relationships and getting customers, right? It's just a big way to be able to farm for customers, and that's what drives a lot of companies to participate in these types of meetings. But for me, I like getting, I want the developers to get together and not feel alone, and to be able to work together and build relationships, just like the business people build these networks of relationships. I really am a big believer that developers can really benefit from the same thing, right? Sure. By working together, learning together, and like you said, the sum is greater than its individual parts, right? The group itself can be very powerful. So I think that was kind of echoed, but that's really, for me, what I love about the hackathon and putting this together. It allows people, developers to get together, get a break from their company, to start thinking outside the box and come together with other developers and build relationships and really have a way to learn. And I think for a lot of people, especially, getting your hands dirty into something new is how you learn, right? Yeah. Have a project in front of you, right? It's not just about reading books, but it's about, doing something meaningful, and hopefully the hackathons, do that for people.
One other thought, though, Mark, would be, I did this as well in the past, is have a workshop around a topic. Mm-hmm. And I think we've got one coming up that very well might be applicable for 2022, and that would be the new UI and the technologies we're invoking there. And having a workshop for those interested on what does that mean? What does that mean, my existing customizations? What does that mean to what new stuff do I have to learn in order to take advantage of that? We don't have anything like that right now. I'm working with training to try to put something together along those lines, in about 18 months. But having a workshop that just covers that topic more, and then having some, break out in teams and and solve parts of the, you guys go off and do this part and this part and this part. And then the sum of the parts come together and we have a solution at the end of this thing. And maybe it's a new business function or a new productivity thing, or maybe it's doing some sort of PCL with IoT devices, or whatever it is. But it's a workshop that has a direction, and then after the workshop, then you have a hackathon where people can, now they've taken this new learning and now they can go hack it, and do something wild with it. But right now, if you were to ask people to, and everyone's busy. I mean, developers today have a job, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to weave in new technologies, and a lot of them do that, but you got to have a reason to do it. And a lot of times the motivation is a project or something you're assigned to go do. So now you have to go learn it, and you get paid to go learn it and all that kind of thing. But this new UI is going to introduce a whole bunch of new technologies that are not native to our environment right now. So,
or to developers' knowledge stack, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of other IDE type of things you can bring into view too, and how you can use those with this new UI. So, I mean, Visual Studio Code is not a big deal at this moment to us, but you can actually use it to do a lot of the UI work now with Aurelia and Node.js and TypeScript and Visual Studio Code is, well, how do you do that? What's that look like? So having a workshop around variations in the IDE environment, CI/CD things that you need to go back and think about a little bit, because Docker will figure into this. I mean, we're already using it in Moscow, so it's going to really figure into this. So that's a whole nother area, with Kubernetes and that, or microservices. And those are all new things. Not one of those things is in the product today.
Yep.
But that's going to be something that's going to be happening in the next 2 years. So, something the hackathon could be is a launching point, for new knowledge and then taking advantage of that new knowledge by making it a project or, a hack, a theme in the hackathon for a team to go off and do something with it.
Yeah. So maybe we could have a workshop a month before that's a virtual workshop that kind of goes through some of this, and then people can take some ideas from these workshops and then drive it home in their hackathon project, maybe. So something we should talk about and think about for this next year.
Because the new UI is going to make bringing in mobile stuff so much easier than it does today.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's my soapbox.
Yeah. So I want to circle back, Ryan, to you and the there's, I guess, three of you still here from your team, and just kind of summarize, really what your experience was, and just kind of leave with that. So Ryan, again, if you can just kind of recap your experience, working with your team members, and whether or not you think, is there any unfinished business, and is there anything we can do to facilitate putting a bow on your solution?
Yeah, and I think it was something that you were saying earlier for ideas for the hackathon. You could kind of around that same subject. You could even have a round 2 hackathon that's especially this year when it's only 6 months away.
Mm-hmm.
So another idea for this year's hackathon could be, okay, take a team member that's had one of the either first or second place ideas from the past hackathons to say, okay, hey, now create a new team and take that to the next level. Mm-hmm. And so if you're looking for finished projects, maybe the following year could be to finish these out, or to take it to the next level, or to Stephen's point, apply the new UI to these projects, or kind of to rehack it in a certain way. So that could do it.
That's an interesting idea, because what we could do is, we have a repository of literally all the hackathon solutions from the last 5 years. Maybe the field is pick one of the hackathon. They're up there in GitHub. Pick one of those, and move and finish it. And maybe that's next year's hackathon.
Maybe multiple groups pick the same solution and they finish it in a different way. And you're like, oh yeah, I never thought to finish it in that way.
But I like the idea of putting together different teams, mix things around so that you would pick a different, and maybe so you pick a different project maybe or something, so it's a little more fair, so that you're not, you know, you have all the domain knowledge, and
Yeah.
you know, you're just going to finish it up and so forth. But maybe we take, you know, the pool is all the winning teams from previous years, and those what you pick from, and you know, pick one to finish, something like that. So those are good thoughts that I'll run by management and see whether, because I think that would be a good way to finish, you know, kind of round two.
And for our group, we all kind of touched base on this, is that we all had varied skill sets, and we all participated. Everyone kind of took off and did their side pieces, and we kind of all had the common vision. And to Stephen's point, as far as what the visual aspect of things is, that it wasn't that the presentation and the visual aspect were in second position to the code. Those who were not developers worked as hard on that piece of it, as the developers did, and we did multiple iterations of the presentation, and we pitched the presentation, and then we went back and just, okay, did that work? Okay, how can we change it? How can the flow work? How can do we do slides for this, or do we do actual acting for this? And so a lot of effort was made on that presentation. And so it wasn't just the development piece of it, is how to present it in the best way possible. We created the dashboard because we wanted that executive summary of things as well. So for future teams, don't let the non-developers off the hook as just kind of hanging around. Push them to work as hard on other pieces to tell that story. Yeah,
and I think, you know, when I first did this, I got pushback from the why are you inviting non-developers? You know, that was it's like, this is our domain. What do you know, you get a little defensiveness. I thought it was funny, but I don't know if it was you, Robert, but I think it was you last year. Somebody told me, and it made me feel really good about, you know, my decision to invite non-developers, but somebody, and I don't know why I think it's you, so correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe you could just lie and just take credit for it. But I remember you or somebody else mentioned, you know, I'm really happy that you invited non-developers. I was skeptical at first, but they really helped us. We couldn't think of any great ideas, but they helped us, you know, with that in the presentation. Was it you that told me that last year?
I'm not sure. It might have been. I don't recall precisely that case. I do feel it. I had Ryan on my team last year, and he did an amazing job with it. I think we lost last year because we had a little glitch in our face recognition punch clock, and that lost us points there. But we were pretty confident we were going to win, and Ryan did an amazing job of whipping together the presentation, and did great.
Yeah, because you know, when I thought about this, I like to look, instead of a hackathon, I kind of look at it more like little mini startups, right? And you need to have, you know, someone that's good at presenting and selling the idea. You need consultant types maybe who've worked directly with customers to look at the customer value aspect and what they need as a, you know, instead of just something that's cool technology, but what value are you offering your audience, your customer, right? And then the developers who have the technical skill to bring it to life, right? So you need different skill sets, as you said, Ryan, and others, you know, to come together to really deliver a meaningful solution. So I hope that that comes across as part of the value of the hackathon, is having different perspectives and mindsets and skill sets to help deliver. So, any other thoughts before we close this out? I appreciate you guys coming back and talking about, you know, your winning solution, and give perspective so that, you know, people viewing this get an idea what, you know, when they think of the hackathon, you know, they're not going to do a 24-hour hackathon and kill themselves. They're you know, what's different about this and why it's valuable and so forth, because we definitely want it to grow. We want to bring new blood in, and we want, you know, to have, you know, as much participation as possible, and make it fun and meaningful for people.
Hey, Mark, one thought, with the lack of having some sort of like a dozen themes or objectives or whatever you want to call them, team objective or team, you know, hack, that then allows other teams to incubate things over the 6 months before the hackathon, and then bring the finished good in that way. And that was one area where, because the teams haven't been assembled, an individual could come up with something, and then if it's already pretty much done, they can introduce it to the team. That's kind of a disadvantage to other teams that haven't done that. So
Right.
So it's just, that's why I think having a list of things that people can pick from introduces that random variable that you have to think about this while you're at the hackathon, versus you've got to think about it for 6 months and you're just going to work on finishing the visuals or something. I know nobody would do that, but but the point is that if you really want it to be a level playing field for these teams, it seems to me that they need to start at a level playing point, which would be
Right.
Everyone gets an idea that they get to pick off a list, and then that's their hack that they're going to work on.
Yeah. So
whatever
they're
that
not
is.
spinning their wheels on the idea. I remember last year, one of the teams, they were still fighting about what the idea was, even when they arrived at the hackathon last year. So they were still like they didn't really have a solid foundation of what they were going to do. I think they said it took another 3 or 4 hours before they decided the direction they
Wow.
were going. Right. And you want to have a really good idea before you get to the hackathon what your solution is going to be. And
Well, I think you
even
can find out what a team meeting ahead of time, since you assign them ahead of time, for
Yeah.
everyone to understand what skills everybody can bring to the table and what they can do.
Yeah.
But having a pre-incubated solution is maybe a little bit puts other teams at a disadvantage. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. But I think, and I will explore this, is maybe next year if I can convince management to go along with it. But I like the idea of taking past hackathon, winning versions and be able to pick one of those solutions and make improvements, finish it, do what's necessary, and present those solutions this year maybe. I don't know.
Or go to development and see what's being redlined right now as things that people want off the wish list. We can hack around that.
Yep. Do that. All right. Well, thanks for your time. I'll be editing all this and hopefully get it out for next week. And I think it's been a valuable coffee and code. So I have all of you to thank for coming back and talking about it. And I appreciate your time, and thanks for the good work. And you have a good rest of your week.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
See ya.
All right.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
folks.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Cheers.